Reddit fresh.
Would I be the idiot for uninviting my friends for my wedding because of their dressing? Throwaway because my friends also use this forum and I don't want to get into another argument. English is not my native language. My friends and I are all 22 to 25 years old. Naturally, that means a few of us are getting married and starting out a new life. We're all happy for them, of course. Yesterday, a guy from our group got married and he invited us all to the party. I dressed up as best as I could, dress, makeup, jewelry, etc., and packed a nice semi-expensive gift. My parents pitched in a bit because I couldn't afford it. When I arrived at the ceremony, my friends, male 23, and male 24, were there wearing plain t-shirts / sweatshirts and jeans. They looked so weird compared to everyone else who was wearing formal attire. I immediately pointed out how they looked strange and should have put some effort in for the bride and groom. They shrugged and said the couple have other things to worry about. They also pointed at my gift and asked me how much I spent on it. When I told them, they seemed shocked that I even brought a gift. Turns out they didn't even bring a gift for the couple. Well, I lectured them on dressing etiquette and how weddings cost an arm and a leg, so we should pitch in and always give money / a gift. They seemed unfazed by the idea and simply brushed me off. This annoyed me a lot, so I said I would have to uninvite them from my own wedding if they behaved this immaturely on my special day. One of them specifically got offended and said I'm enforcing old school traditions upon them and making them feel bad. I told him that's the point. I want him to learn that this is unacceptable behavior. The bride and groom were far up on the stage and simply avoided coming over to us. The groom just nodded at the group once, then turned back to his wife. I think they didn't want to be seen with us. The guy said they wouldn't bother attending my wedding anyway since I'm an AH. So am I the idiot? I think there are old school traditions and then there are manners. Edit, they found my post and read the comments. 2 of them have apologized. The guy who got offended the most has blocked us all. Boy, bye, I guess. Not the idiot. You'll get a lot of idiot votes because Reddit tends to be all about individual preferences, but in this case, the cultural standard is clear. You dress in the best that you have in order to honor the bride and groom. Not dressing up says, I can't be bothered, the bride and groom aren't worth my effort, and that is the behavior of an idiot. Sure, different people have different resources, so one person's best might look quite unimpressive to another person, but the point is that you dress as well as you can, not that you meet a particular objective standard, and these guests obviously couldn't be bothered. Not the idiot, though lecturing your friends at the wedding wasn't the time / place, if only it could have easily erupted into a headache for the bride and groom. Bringing a gift is expected and a nice tradition, you don't have to spend a lot. People dress nicely for weddings, unless otherwise specified. Now, for the next story. Am I the idiot for asking my parents to pay some of the Parent Plus loan they took out for me? TLDR, am I the idiot for asking my parents to take back some of the financial responsibility of Parent Plus loans after I've paid a lot of it over the past few years? Back in 2010, I was trying to go to college. The only way we could afford it at the time was if both myself and my parents took out separate student loans. I know, it was a stupid amount of money and maybe I should have rethought that. My parents didn't have any objections at the time and signed up for the loan. Fast forward about 10 or so years in the future. I had been living at my parents' after college and was making payments on my personal student loan. I got married and moved in with my wife. At the end of 2020, my mom called me and explained to me that she and my father would no longer be able to make any payments on the Parent Plus loan and that they needed me to pay. At that point, they had only been making the minimum interest payment without touching the principal. I started my payments on that loan. For context, the interest amount per month on the loans was $500. My parents offered no financial assistance. Fast forward 3 years and what was once a $65,000 debt, about half of its sheer interest, is now down to $20,000 in just principal. Things are a little different now as we have a small child and a mortgage. My wife also went part-time due to childcare needs and our discretionary funds are tapped. I haven't been able to make payments and recently contacted my mom to let her know this. She explained to me that even though the loans were in her name, she considered it my debt and something I needed to resolve. I explained to her that my finances have changed recently and she complained that stopping the payments was poor financial decision making. I've now involved my dad because he's the one that actually pays bills and does my family's budget and gave him the login information for the loan servicer. One of my mom's concerns is that if they help me by taking up payments on this loan, they'd have to help my siblings as well. For clarification, my adult siblings live with my parents and one of them has 2 kids and a wife as well. Note, I was a 17-year-old kid when these loan docs were signed, but I'm not trying to excuse myself. Note, we've already applied for the potential forgiveness, both the $10,000 and the PSLF, but that's in holdup right now obviously. I did all of the legwork on that as well. Note number 3, sorry but I need to clarify that MY minimum interest payment was $500, parents were only paying about $50 a month, which is what they could afford, leading up to 2020. Note number 4, I previously paid off my own student loans that were in my name, cost me about $22,000, but worth it. Not the idiot going against the grain here. Parent Plus loans are loans that the parents take to pay for college. They are not the responsibility of the student. Parents could have said, no, we don't want to, we can't afford it, whatever it is. But no. It's not OP's responsibility to pay for those loans. Not the idiot, you were 17. And the more appropriate question is, am I the idiot for telling my parents that I won't be making payments on student loans they took out in their name for my education? A loan, by the way, that your parents let accumulate interest for 10 years. Like, I get it, they did it for you, and if you are able to, you should probably pay it off. But life happens, and for student loans in your own name, you can apply for waivers or reduce your payments. You don't have that option. If they can't pay it, their credit and their credit alone suffers. It might be a bad situation, but it doesn't make you an AH. Now, for the next story. Am I the idiot for telling one of my good friends I wouldn't attend his wedding because my wife wasn't invited? My best friend from college, 26, male, and I, 25, male, are both having weddings this year, his June and mine November. Mine is really more of just a party because I married my wife at the courthouse about a year ago because we didn't want to wait until we could afford the party to commit to each other. He invited me to his wedding but not my wife. I waited until his deadline for RSVPs and then told him I wouldn't attend because my wife and I go to events together, or we don't go because she is the woman behind me as I am the man behind her, and we are effectively a unit. I know I shouldn't have waited, but I wanted to try and push off an uncomfortable conversation. He blew up on me and accused me of always choosing others over him and not being a decent friend or caring about him at all. He said that he didn't invite my wife because there physically wasn't enough space at the venue and that I wasn't the only one affected by this. He went on to essentially say that I need to not be codependent and that he wasn't asking me to go on a 6-month deployment from my family, but that I needed to be there for him to be a good friend. I eventually caved because he made me feel bad and said I'd go without my wife, also after talking about it with my wife. But my thought now is that if you plan a wedding at a physically small space, it's okay to invite just me, but by the same token, don't be upset when I decline because you made your bid type of deal. It's also worth noting I had a similar constraint on my wedding, but cut 2 family members to allow both he and his soon-to-be wife seats at my wedding. Context: I am a government controls engineer working on a very expensive, to the tune of higher-ups giving updates to Congress, very time-consuming project currently. I'm not at the top of the chain, but I've been able to advance my career very quickly, so I am in a position of responsibility. I missed his bachelor party because I needed to travel for a work meeting. He is very much still the Chad bro, let's get drunk type, and I'm not anymore. I have a wife, I have 2 small children who are the absolute most important thing to me. I don't respond to his texts nearly as often or as quickly, and I don't endlessly play video games with our old group like I used to, so I think it's fair for him to feel he's not as important, because while I love him, he also just isn't compared to my career, but most of all family. Am I the idiot for saying I wouldn't go and now thinking I should take back my offer to go after having time to think about it? Edit: I know I'm preachy, so I'll be brief. My wife and I are not attached at the hip. To clarify, weddings, funerals, graduations, work dinners we go to together. Formal events. If it's girls' night or boys' night level stuff, we have no problem being apart. I also did not send in an RSVP. I let the automatic system do it for me. The website read RSVP here, no submission will be counted as will not attend at deadline. IMO that reflects very poorly on me, in an effort to be fair. Edit: I'm not going to his wedding and he's not going to mine. The friendship has been terminated, not for just this, but an accumulation of reasons. People asked why I waited to respond knowing it was wrong. I was weak essentially, and events from our history made me procrastinate because I knew in any event it wouldn't be a good conversation. Not an excuse, and I know I messed up there. I think this was an everyone sucks here even with all the NTAs, and I was called on behaviors I have that aren't good, that I now recognize and agree with. YTA, you could have simply declined the invitation in a timely manner without the accompanying soliloquy. The whole we are a unit thing was unnecessary, but when you started throwing judgmental terms around criticizing his character, you became the idiot. It is perfectly reasonable to not attend if your wife wasn't invited. The rest just veers off into assholery. You're the idiot. You are handling this whole thing in the most passive-aggressive way. If he's a friend, you be upfront immediately and decline so he can invite someone else. If he still wants you and wife says go, then go and enjoy. It's a wedding, a time to celebrate others. Don't make it about yourself. Using family as an excuse to avoid a friend is sus. Sounds like you don't really like this guy anymore. Now, for the next story. Am I the idiot for not wanting to be around his family when I can't understand them? Edit. I have enrolled in courses through university this semester and have been actively trying harder. Edit 2. I wasn't at zero before my course, I had the basics. I worked in customer service, so basic convo is not an issue. I can't understand complex convo. I'm solid in reading and writing, I just suck at speaking and listening. So I, female 35, married a Scandinavian, 37M. We decided it was easier for me to move to him because he has kids from a previous relationship. I have none. So, I moved here. Now I would just like to preface that I am learning the language, maybe not as dedicated as I should be, but it's coming on slowly. Adding that everyone here speaks nearly perfect English, my native lang, hasn't forced anything really. Everyone except his mother, she speaks very poor English, and we have not really communicated much with each other, outside of translations. So at family functions, I just kinda sit there waiting for someone to talk to me. I'm not really involved in conversations or plan making. Sometimes they are talking and they will stop to ask me a question about the convo they are having. I give an answer, then they carry on in their own language. Now I kinda get why they speak around mom that way. She's more important, and excluding her would be like A-level douche. Except, when we go out with his brother and his GF, they all talk without including me, and they all speak perfect English. In other situations, going out with friends and coworkers, they understand and usually make a point to speak English around non-speakers so they feel included. But my husband doesn't do that with his bro and his girl. Slightly hurts my feelings, especially when they make a point to invite me so I feel included, then just exclude the frick out of me. I started learning the language, trying harder to speak with them. But the last 2 times, his mom would not slow down for me even after asking, and his brother just laughed at my attempts. Grammar, pronunciation not very encouraging. So, I will confess at this point, a few years later, it's exhausting and lonely in those moments, especially when I consider how close I am with family, how welcoming they are, and how excluded I feel here. Last time we visited, I basically just sat on my phone and maybe had 1 too many drinks because I was feeling salty and sad. Apparently this was a problem because it looked like I didn't care. I told him time and time how it was, and he just doesn't see the problem and insists they include me. We got in a huge fight, and I basically said I don't want to go to family functions anymore, which he said cannot happen because I will be expected. So am I the idiot here? You're the idiot. 3 years is long enough. You can choose with whom you want to hang out in your leisure time, that is fine. But after marrying a local and living there for 3 years, you can be expected to speak the language well enough for everyday communication. You're the idiot. When you move to another country, you learn the language. It doesn't matter whether they can speak your native language nearly perfectly. You learn the language of where you're living. You learn the culture. You learn the laws. You absorb yourself into the land in which you live. You're allowed to keep some of your culture and language with you. That's perfectly respectable. But if you can't be bothered to learn the language/culture where you move to and expect everyone to cater to you, then you are a world-class idiot. Now, for the next story. Am I the idiot for telling my sister that she will ruin her kid's life if she homeschools them? My sister, female 32, Addie, and I 20F, have a pretty large age gap of 12 years. My niece, who we will call Lily, is about to turn 5 and will be old enough to start school this coming August. Due to our large age gap, my sister and I were raised 2 very different ways. Addie went to public school but ultimately dropped out in the 10th grade, while I was homeschooled from the 3rd grade until I graduated. Addie was talking about homeschooling Lily, as Addie is a stay-at-home mom with tons of free time. When she told me about this, I told her not to do it, as she would most likely be ruining Lily's life and taking away any chance of her developing normally. As I mentioned earlier, I was homeschooled for most of my life and it absolutely messed me up. There was nothing wrong with my curriculum and I learned at a faster pace than children going to public school, but homeschooling made me so unprepared for the real world. I was not socially developed enough, so when I went to college and experienced other people in a normal setting, it was traumatizing. I had, and still have, severe anxiety, and would experience panic attacks just being around other people. I was very sensitive and sheltered, and I took the smallest things so personally. The first year or so was absolute hell because I didn't know how to properly socialize with people. I told Addie that if she homeschooled Lily, she would be preventing Lily from developing key skills she would need later in life, and I also told her that I believed Lily would grow to resent Addie, as it wouldn't be healthy for Lily to spend the majority of her time with her mother. Addie took this very personally and assumed my objection came from the fact that Addie didn't finish high school, rather than any of the reasons I explained to her. I tried explaining that Lily needed to be around children her own age, and that even putting Lily in clubs or sports wouldn't make much of a difference because those typically only met once or twice a week, but by this point Addie was pretty much ignoring me. She hasn't been speaking to me since this happened a few days ago, but apparently has been telling her friends and our family that I am trying to influence her parenting decisions, and I've gotten some pretty passive-aggressive messages online because of it. So, am I the idiot? Not the idiot, I'm Spanish. Homeschooling here isn't even legal, so I really don't get this American thing. But the fact she didn't end high school and wants to be the one providing education to a kid? You gave your opinion because your experience turned out this way. That's normal, you want to avoid it for another person. Not the idiot. I might get downvoted, but you're absolutely right with your reasoning. Studies already show the damaging effects of the COVID lockdowns on kids' social abilities and overall mental health, and that was just 2 years. Science is on your side in this regard. Also, voicing concern isn't an thing to do. In the end, you can't decide how your niece gets raised. The best you can do is to be there for her. Make up with your sister and offer help instead, like providing opportunities for your niece to socialize. Good luck.